Hi, neighbors. It's Ashley. Welcome back to Front Porch Retreats. I'm so glad you pulled up a chair today. Today, Judith and I chat about a phrase that's uttered in some variation by countless people every single day. Have you heard it yet today? Let's get coffee sometime. Or we should grab coffee. What is it about coffee that makes this kind of phrase almost our universal shorthand for signaling we're seeking some level of human connection? When I started thinking about this very common behavior, I wondered if it was a more recent phenomenon. Turns out it isn't. Coffee has been pulling people together for a very long time. Academic and historical sources seem to point to the coffee culture as being born in the Middle East. As early as the 15th century in Yemen, coffee houses were already functioning as gathering places for scholars, merchants, poets, and travelers. By the mid-1600s, Istanbul alone had over 600 of them. And these were not quiet places. They were forums for debate, business, music, and storytelling. It was a place where conversation was the whole point. Now, women, for the most part, weren't part of that public coffeehouse culture. In the Ottoman Empire, women had their own social spaces, like the bathhouse, which seems to have essentially served the same role for women, minus the coffee. But the public coffeehouse, that was largely a male domain across cultures, with some exceptions in parts of Germany and elsewhere. When coffeehouse culture reached England in the 17th century, it took on a particular character. These establishments were nicknamed penny universities, and the name was literal. For the price of a single penny, which was the cost of a cup of coffee then, I know, right? A single penny. A man could walk in, sit at a shared table, and join conversations, ranging from philosophy and science to politics, trade, and the gossip of the day. The absence of alcohol created an atmosphere that allowed for more serious conversation than you find at an alehouse. And unlike most institutions of the time, social class wasn't necessarily a barrier at the door. Some major institutions we still know today, including Lloyd's of London and the London Stock Exchange, can trace their roots back to some of those humble coffee houses. The tradition spread across Europe, with each culture putting its own stamp on the same basic idea. Come in, sit down, and talk to someone. Sociologist Ray Oldenburg would eventually give a name to what all of these places actually were. In his 1989 book, The Great Good Place, Mr. Oldenburg coined the term third place, which is characterized as a social gathering spot distinct from home and work, where conversation is the main activity. Now, fast forward a few hundred years, and we're still reaching for coffee as the social prop of choice. And yet, if you walk into a coffee house today, I would suggest something feels different than what I've been describing. The warm hum of a debate has largely been replaced by the glow of laptop or phone screens. People might sit in the same room, but in entirely separate worlds, with earbuds in, heads down, or maybe talking quietly with the specific person or people they came to meet. The open table, where a merchant might sit next to a philosopher, next to a stranger who becomes a friend, that seems mostly gone. We still call it a third place. We still reach for coffee when we want to connect. But somewhere along the way, the coffee house stopped being a place where you met people and became a place where you meet people for a specific purpose, often with an end time already decided. Hey neighbors, don't forget to grab the conversation guide that goes with this episode at frontporchretreats.com. It's an easy way to take this conversation off the podcast and into your own life. See our show notes for links and more. All right, neighbors, let's get into the conversation with Judith. I've got my cup of coffee. Do you? Let's go. So I was going to share with you something. Most morning, I make a pot of coffee, and it's one of the very first things I do when I get up after feeding any animals I might have in my house. And I always smell the coffee grounds before I put them into the coffee pot. And I think it's actually the aroma that I love more than the coffee, actually. But it really doesn't matter whether it's, the middle of summer and already very hot out when I'm making my coffee, or a freezing winter day. It's the routine and the warmth of the mug and kind of even the bitterness of the beverage. I like mine black, no sugar or cream. And that's really comforting to me. So I know this is a morning ritual that I share with many other humans. And it is one I genuinely miss if I don't get to enjoy it. I think I just really love the feeling of the mug, and sometimes just a few moments of the quiet I might sneak in with it. I usually don't drink coffee past noon, but I was thinking as I was making my morning coffee the other day about how frequently we throw out the phrase, hey, let's get coffee sometime. And we do that in the professional sphere, we do it in our personal spheres. And I have done it many times. And I've also been on the receiving end of invitations to get coffee, both professional, personal. And it seems like it's kind of this universal shorthand for, hey, I want to stay in touch, but maybe without overcommitting. Or, I just want to talk to you casually. Or I want to hit two birds with one stone and get my coffee, but also accomplish this connection. We don't usually say things like, hey, let's get some water, or let's go stand in a park. We choose this specific drink, which generally implies a specific type of setting, like a neutral coffee shop, or, if you're lucky to have a mobile coffee stand in a park near you, maybe you can go actually stand in the park, but with your coffee. And I'm curious, like, why do you think we reach for coffee specifically as the stand-in for, like, I want to connect with you? What do you think it is about this particular phrase or the setting it supports? And is the drink like admission to justify having a conversation? So I'm just kind of curious, like, what do you think about that? When was the last time someone said, hey, let's get coffee, to you? And did it actually happen?
Well, that's kind of an interesting framing because I see the coffee as being a means of determining if there's a real interest.
Say more about that.
Well, it's the sort of thing that you don't really put yourself out there too much. If you say, let's go get, coffee sometime.
Right. Yeah, like don't overcommit.
There's no commitment. Yeah. And it's interesting because I think that is actually a sign of the lack of commitment, the lack of connection. So if it doesn't come about, it's not a big deal. And it's not a reflection on you.
Right.
And if it does come about, you don't have a long-term commitment. It's not like you're there for an extended period of time. If it's comfortable, you might stay. Or if something else comes up, you might not even go. The other thing is, I think I've seen more of it since we went through that phase of coronavirus and people left the workplace. So there's less connections. And so now it's like if they get an opportunity with someone, you've got to make a place for it because you don't have a place.
Yeah, that's where it's like so awkward. We can't just like meet at, no one wants to go back to the well, maybe some people do. But it's like coffee is a conduit for conversation. Right. Some things I know some people have tried are like, hey, let's, why don't we take a walk? Which I would love that unless it's important to be dressed for something, because sometimes it is depending, very much depends on the person and what you're trying to accomplish. But that's where I think it's interesting. Like it's coffee. It's not even tea. Like sometimes if I go get coffee, I actually go get tea with someone.
Right.
Because I'm like, nah, it's, especially if it's in the afternoon, trying to be conscious of the time of day, but we still say, let's go get coffee.
It used to be, I think, when you're in the workplace or when you're in a community setting, whether it be church or whether it be meetings that you go to, there are opportunities to connect with people. But when we went through the time of not being in those places, that became something you had to plan and you had to actually schedule. And it changed the whole dynamics. It wasn't as fluid and it didn't happen as easily. And I think that you had to find what can we agree to connect over. And coffee seems to be the easy one. Plus, with all the coffee shops around, my goodness.
Yeah.
There's plenty of places to go.
I have one where I live now I can literally walk to, which, I live in the suburbs, so it's pretty sprawly out here. But even I have a coffee shop I can walk to now.
There's so many of them. And it seems like coffee shops are dominating much of the streets.
Yeah, they
more than
are.
one.
It's like car washes and coffee shops.
That's it. That's it.
And I wonder, as far as places of connection, I think that's kind of an interesting observation. And I think some people refer to those as third places. It's not your home because it's almost like taboo to invite people to your home, which is interesting to me. Like I kind of get it, but I also kind of wish it was more the norm because, and just like if I'm gonna have coffee, like when I say that, like I get we're talking about different things, but truly I prefer coffee at my own house
Right.
because I'm like, I can warm it up again because I like my coffee really hot if I'm gonna drink it. And at the coffee shop, it's like 5 minutes in and it's already too cold. So I'm not
Yep.
really there for the coffee anyway. I'm there for the person, but I've spent like $5 on the coffee and I feel a little bit annoyed about that.
That's if you got a cheap
Here
cup
I
of
am ranting
coffee.
about this. Yeah, right?
If you got a cheap cup of
Right? No,
coffee.
that's like a drip black,
Mhm.
nothing else. I kind of wish it was more the norm to be like, hey, do you want to pop over to my house for coffee if you're in the area?
Right. Doesn't happen.
Yeah, like why do you think? I mean, I don't know. Did that ever happen? I haven't really given that much thought. Is going to people's houses like why is that so uncomfortable?
Well, it's interesting because I can take it back from my childhood where, again, we have the porch and
The
people
front
talk on the
porch.
front
Yes,
porch
yes, they do.
and
Never
people
come inside, but on the front porch. Yeah,
well,
maybe they come inside.
they could come inside, but the front porch is the invitation,
Mhm, mhm.
just like the coffee is the invitation.
Yes, yeah, I like that.
And then you have the period of time where you had the fences between homes and people would hang over the fence. They'd
Mhm.
meet at the fence and have conversations. And no one has to bring anything. They might have their coffee with them, who knows?
Right, right.
But they didn't have to. And they can converse as long as they have the time or enjoy it, and then they can leave.
Mhm.
It's a free flowing thing. Anything else is kind of a more of a connection than many people like to have until they want to be fully connected. Then you had, at least in my era, in my college era in particular, you had people who didn't have money, so they did come to the homes.
Oh, okay.
They
Mhm.
came to the places to stay, and we shared, and we'd have instant coffee
Yum.
and focus on what we were learning and the world discussions, and it was a vibrant time
Mhm.
and much more fulfilling. That's not the case as much anymore.
Was that your college era?
That was my college era.
Okay, so I mean, that's also like a different age,
It is.
different responsibilities,
It
different kind of
is.
lifestyle. Yeah. Maybe that is still on college campus. It's been a while since I've been in college, but I hear my daughter
Mhm.
who just graduated from college actually,
Yep.
she often has friends over
Yep.
visiting. It sounds, I've never gotten to be a part of that.
No, would you?
No, probably not. I mean, I
Yep.
feel like they probably are having good discussions. I'll have to like see if I can get any insight from her about like what kinds of things do they talk about? Politics? Do they talk about world events? Like,
Probably all of those things at different times based on what's
yeah,
going on.
yeah.
And the ability to have it in a safe place that doesn't cost too much,
Yep,
which is a
yep.
real win
Yeah, yeah.
if you're a
Yep.
college student.
For sure. And as we get older, though, I'd be curious to hear from our listeners. Do you go to coffee shops and just hang out yourself? Because I don't. I don't do that myself. Like in my head, that kind of sounds romantic to like go work at a coffee shop. And, at the end of the day, like operationalizing that is not only another expense, but it takes me a period of time to get there. I have to make sure I'm probably not just wearing yoga pants. It's a little self judgment there. And if I'm going to go work, I have only a laptop. And I've been a little bit spoiled because I now cannot stand to just work on, my laptop when completing my work. I really love my monitors.
Hmm.
And like, so sacrificing, I'm immediately less productive. So I guess I'm curious, like when I think about going to a coffee shop, there is candidly an objective. So it's like, hey, I'm not here for the coffee. I'm not here to hang out. I'm not here to even meet new people. I'm here to meet a specific person that I set up a specific time for, and I allotted a specific time on my calendar for,
Hmm.
and so it's usually like 90 minutes or less.
Right. Which makes it more of a commitment, but it's more of a job.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's the difference. So I don't think it's a inability to have relationships. I think it's a choosing not to have relationships. Because if you have a relationship, again, it's not the coffee.
Right.
Coffee is a means to create the opportunity to build a relationship.
And I think that we do that. We just do it,
Yes.
like, especially I guess at my age, when I think about like when I say that or when I receive an invitation like that, it's either to create and build
Mhm.
a connection or to see if there is an interest to build a connection, or it's to maintain a connection.
Right.
And those are important too. Sometimes I think there are so many people I would love to quote unquote have coffee with
Yes.
to maintain, do a better job because there's just not as many opportunities the way that my current lifestyle is
Mhm.
to do those maintenance type of conversations.
Mhm.
There just isn't. Like that's the truth for myself is there are not as many opportunities as there were. But I can't have 30 coffees every day.
No.
I just can't.
No. Yeah, it's interesting because when in my work life, it was the sort of thing where the connection didn't require the coffee. They used to talk about going to the water cooler,
Right, yep.
right? Having conversations there. But it could also be at lunchtime, going out for a
Yep,
walk
yep.
with a colleague.
Or lunch.
You could do that
You
too.
didn't enjoy that as
No,
much. Yeah.
no, I enjoyed going out for the walk
Mhm.
because that would give me the outside as well.
Yes.
And I did that quite often with colleagues
Mhm.
who were also seeking, but we were constantly discussing things that were relevant to us at that time, whether
Yep.
it was work, whether it was family, or whether it was something within the world situation.
Yep, and I did the same. I loved
Mhm.
that too. Those time outdoors, there were multiple benefits
Right.
to that ability.
And those aren't there now.
No, not really.
Occasionally, you might have a friend or someone
Mhm.
connect and go for a walk, but it's not the norm.
When frequently, unless you have a tight-knit community,
Right.
the people that we are either working with or connected to are very dispersed.
Right. I think it's just the change that you
Mhm.
see
Yeah,
happening
yeah.
in society. And I think a lot of people are looking for community. And
We hear that a lot, don't
yeah,
we?
we do.
Yeah, front porch retreats, that is really what we
Definitely.
are central to, and
Right.
we've heard it over and over. We need that in
That's
our lives.
very much so. At one point, of course, whenever families were closer together,
Mhm.
they were their own little community.
Well, that's kind of how we are.
We are. For many families, they're not close.
Right.
They're at a distance, and so they rely on the telephone or the text or the whatever occasional note that they might send,
Mhm.
and that's a real different way of connecting.
Right.
Back to the coffee, I think it's just a means to an end.
What an interesting way to think about it. I was kinda curious for how you landed on, like, what does that even mean, you
Yeah.
know? I was thinking, a fun experiment. I'm always thinking about fun experiments. I was thinking a fun experiment is what could I replace coffee with and just try it on a few people next time I feel like uttering those words towards
Mhm.
someone. I'll have to brainstorm what some alternatives, because I can't say things like, let's go get some ice cream. Like, how can we get an ice cream sometime? Because I don't really want to commit to that. What are some things I could potentially commit to if they're like, yeah, that sounds actually like a great idea? What's an alternative to coffee? So, anyway, we'll think about that. But in the meantime, how about we shift over to our quotes section, Judith?
Absolutely.
All right, see you there. Every episode, Judith and I both share a selected quote and why it resonated with us today. Judith, what's your quote today?
Well, my quote comes from Earl Wilson. He's a baseball player with the Red Sox from some years back, and I thought it was just a fascinating piece. He said, "Science may never come up with a better communication system than the coffee break." And I thought that was very much the truth, that if you don't take the break and take the time to converse with others, you won't have any communication at all.
That's a very thoughtful quote. You want to read that for us again?
Yes. And I want to give Earl Wilson the credit that he deserves for it because it's very well thought through. Science may never come up with a better communication system than the coffee break.
Love it. Well, my quote today is attributed to David Lynch, and he said, there's a safety in thinking in a diner. You can have your coffee or your milkshake, and you can go off into strange, dark areas and always come back to the safety of the diner. Judith, that actually just really resonated with me, from something that you said earlier about like the coffee is a conduit. I think that's what I really took away from this quote and why it kind of resonated with me is because it's almost, and sometimes maybe that's why I like having and sitting and holding my coffee mug because in the moment, I sometimes in the morning, for example, I'm off thinking about a variety of things when I'm sitting there having my coffee and the warmth of the mug, the sensation of it is what kind of pulls me back into the presence. And I just think that's a really, again, an astute observation about the value. And I don't know that I want to go think in a diner specifically, but I think that what he's saying here is really about that conduit. And I think there's value in that because, we need to be able to think about things, and we also need a mechanism to come back into presence. And I think that, in this case, your mug or your milkshake, like David Lynch says here, your milkshake, whatever it is, you can come back to that, and it puts you right back into the moment that you're actually in. So that's what, kind of where my head went when I saw this quote, and I just really loved it. So I'll read it again. There's a safety in thinking in a diner. You can have your coffee or your milkshake, and you can go off into strange, dark areas. Always come back to the safety of the diner. And that was, again, attributed to David Lynch. Before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought. David Lynch, an American filmmaker who professed to love coffee so much that he said even bad coffee was better than no coffee, which is one thing I might have to disagree with him about, once wrote that coffee facilitates thinking and catching ideas. He was talking about his own morning ritual, but I think there's something bigger in it. Maybe coffee has always been less about the drink and more about what it opens up in our minds and between people. Maybe a good let's get coffee is really an opening, a small door we crack open for someone else and say, I see you. There's room for you here. Think of one person you've said, let's get coffee to. Send a text. Make it real. It doesn't have to be coffee even. It doesn't have to be long. Try something new. Grab the conversation guide for this episode and take it with you. Try it out and see where the conversation leads. It just might be the conversation you didn't know you needed. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe to the Front Porch Retreats channel on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Front Porch Retreats. And you can find the full conversation guide for this episode on our website at frontporchretreats.com. Use it to take this conversation into your own life with the people who matter to you. See our show notes for links and more information. See you soon. Bye, neighbors.